Welcome to Best Picture This, where it is always Oscar season. I'm Mike.
And I'm Brian. In this show, we reevaluate every Best Picture nominee from the 21st century and decide whether to keep it or kick it from its Oscar pedestal.
But hold fast, Brian. This isn't just any other episode. This is the first in a new miniseries, this one on the films of 2003, when the nominees for Best Picture were Mystic River, Seabiscuit, Lost in Translation, Lord of the Ring, Return of the King, and today's movie, Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World, directed by Peter Weir. Brian, let fly the trailer.
All right, lads. Touch wood, Mr. Blakeney. Turn 3 times. May the Lord of Saints preserve. Simon Bauer, hoist! All hands down!
Just a broken arm, sir.
You're in very good hands. 7 weeks sailing, and he happened on our exact position.
Well, then perhaps he was looking for us.
Damn, he was good.
An act of war will cripple them.
With basic repairs, we can get home as we are.
We're not going home.
The power of nature will threaten them.
Our enemy has more than twice our guns, more than twice our numbers, and we are supposed to stop it.
Torn between fulfilling his duty.
Captain's not called Lucky Jack for no reason. Phantom or no, Lucky Jack will have her.
And the lives of the men he commands.
Steady!
He must face the invincible.
He fights like you, Jack. A hunter becomes the hunted.
Well then, there's not a moment to lose. 2 feet 6 inches, sir.
The men would follow you anywhere. As a friend, I would say that we should have turned back weeks ago.
It's leadership they want. Strength. Find that within yourself, and you will earn their respect. When we board, you'll take him out of the ship.
Take him on the ship. Thank you, sir.
For home! And for the prize!
See you afterwards.
Let's fly!
Let fly.
Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World. Those trailers, we've made fun of all the voices, but there's a lot more words to read on the screen during the trailers. The more modern they get. Anyway, so
There
this,
are.
the budget for this movie was 150 million, and it made 211.6. So it made 61 million.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of considered not enough to justify diving into like a full-blown franchise. So do you think 61 million is a small amount of money, or is it a lot of money to you? What do you think?
To me, it's a very small amount of money, Brian.
Okay.
You know my net worth. But no, I understand that because the production was so enormous. I mean, $150,000, million budget. That's really, really big. So they were probably hoping to double that at the box
probably
office.
So. It opened number 2 in the box office in November 2003, behind Elf.
Oh, all right. So this begs the question: Elf or Master and Commander?
It does indeed.
I guess it depends on what time of year we're watching the movie, right?
Well, November. I mean, it came out in November. So Master and Commander, if you want to challenge Elf, Will Ferrell in tights, then you better bring your A game.
I love Elf.
This movie won 2 Oscars, cinematography and sound editing. It was nominated for a bunch more and lost all of those to Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. It was nominated for Best Picture, nominated for Best Director, Peter Weir, and then a bunch of other kind of technical ones.
This was the year that Lord of the Rings really cleaned up, right?
Yeah, Return of the King was big time. There was a prequel announced in this month, actually. June 2021, a prequel was announced to be in active development. So
oh wow. So Crowe's coming back.
I don't know if it's Crow. I mean, how could he do a
Oh.
prequel? Like he's older and heavier now.
Yeah, I
So
guess
how could
that's
he
true.
do
But
that?
listen, they can do the de-aging now. You've seen The Irishman.
That was the worst part of The Irishman.
Oh, come
So
on. That's another podcast.
just a quick note on Peter Weir, since we're talking about the Oscars with this movie. So Peter Weir has been nominated a bunch of times. Besides Master and Commander, 5 years earlier, he was nominated for Best Director for The Truman Show. Before that, he was nominated for writing on The Green Card in 91, and he was nominated for Best Director twice before that for Dead Poets Society in 1990 and Witness in 1986, the Harrison Ford classic.
Of those three,
Yeah.
Witness, Dead Poet Society, and The Truman Show, what's your pick?
Ooh, I would love to see all three of those over again, but I guess I'll have to lean toward Dead Poets Society. What about you?
I thought you'd go Dead Poets. I'm going to go Truman Show. I feel like Truman Show is just one of those kind of underappreciated sort of gems. I love
Yeah.
that movie.
Yeah. It's interesting too that he put Robin Williams in a serious role in Dead Poets Society, and he put Jim Carrey in a serious role in The Truman
Yeah.
Show. So he's kind of apparently known for that somewhat. So coming up in this episode, we'll do our Farley Awards. We'll do our golden takes. We'll ask each other one question that is designed to help you choose the lesser of two Weevils. We will imagine what might have been, and we'll talk trivia, and then do the big reveal. This is where it gets serious, Mike.
The
This is
lesser of two
no-
Weevils. I just love how in the movie they take time to give
yeah.
Russell Crowe like all these dad jokes.
Yeah.
Because he also gives that toast where he says, you know, to our wives and sweethearts, may they never meet.
May
And
they
then he
never
does that
meet.
little like giggle,
The
and he
little
does
laugh,
the same
yeah.
giggle after the Weevils. It's so good.
It
So
is
good.
great. If you had to choose, if there were no other choice, but you were forced to choose So, but this is a serious episode here because we're in 2003.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have to ultimately someday, some month or so in the future, have a finale episode where we choose what really were the top 5 movies. So keeping or kicking this movie means that it's going to keep us, take a slot away from something else. The Farley Awards.
For our best, I didn't know if you were going to say something there, but the Farley Awards. This is for our most awesome moment of the movie. And I think before we go into it, we need to acknowledge the worst moment of the movie, which is all of this beetle handling. There's so much touching of bugs in this movie.
Love the
it's too
Beatles.
much.
Come on.
It's too much. Maybe see a beetle, show me a beetle once. Don't touch the beetle.
You don't hold beetles in your hands?
Not as a part of my everyday life.
I thought
no,
you were an
but
outdoorsman.
No, I'm an avid indoorsman, Brian. This has been established over and over again. But the best moment, that's the big battle set piece at the end for me. I mean, Russell Crowe's character orchestrates this attack where the crew disguises themselves and the ship as this whaling vessel. And they paint it, they put a different flag on it, they put on different clothes, they hide their guns and swords sort of under... I don't know. I don't know any ship terms, Brian, so you're going to have to help me along.
There were many of them thrown about in this movie, which was very cool. I thought gave a lot of authenticity to it with all the weird terms.
Yes, but I'm not going to try to replicate those because I'm going to get them wrong. I don't know anything about ships, but all of that buildup, putting on the disguises, getting ready to trick this enemy phantom ship, a lot of great tension in that buildup. But once the fight starts, and we really get a sense of how naval warfare works, about this close quarters combat, I thought that was just great. I mean, it was so brutal once they start fighting close up, with point blank gunshots, like sword stabbing, the little kids who are kind of a part of this crew getting groomed to be the next commander. They're so involved. And it reframes sort of how we think of water-based battles as just kind of being cannon fire. This really recontextualizes it, and I think it really works. And also, it's just super chaotic. A lot of quick cuts, but Weir is really good to keep us oriented. So you feel that chaos without being confused of where are they now? Who are they fighting? Who do we care about? All that's really well done. I just think the scene is really exciting, but also kind of just an interesting showcase to show us those naval warfare mechanics, which I didn't really know anything about before going into this.
I love the slow-mo moment when Russell Crowe's kind of knocked over and then, it goes to silent, which you see in a lot of war movies, but
Yeah, it's a
then you
big
see
thing.
this like look at the determination on his face as he gets up. And I could feel that kind of that like anger to, retaliate. So my favorite moment is the beetle, Mike.
Oh, are you kidding?
When Blakeney,
Oh no.
I'm not kidding. When Blakeney, okay, the young boy, he loses his arm in battle. And Paul Bettany's character, Stephen, who in all the novels, his name is Maturin or Maturin. He is so disappointed, Paul Bettany's character, is that he can't go on the island to see the Galapagos and, study nature. And when Blakeney, the little kid, walks up to him and hands him this beetle, he says, "Would you have walked all day on the island, you might never have come across it." And Paul Bettany is just like so overwhelmed with the kindness of this kid. And it also captures the wonder of creation that Paul Bettany's character has throughout, the reverence. He's like so intense about wanting to see these new species. And I'm not really an outdoorsman either, but I do love nature. And I love I like watching documentaries, watching people hold beetles, but not holding them myself. And it elevates that whole element really elevates the movie from purely adventure to something that is also philosophical. It's talking about science and observation versus superstition.
And it's
There's
a
lot
big part of the movie. It's not
is.
like his character cares about science and the Galapagos and that's all we get. I mean, there's a big chunk of time that's spent of, him drawing different animals that he's kind of discovering on this island. And it's you feel that in the script that it's a balancing act between those two. And that little kid character is great because he's kind of the product of both of them, right? Of the two sort of different forms of men and of leaders, and he's being groomed to kind of be the best parts of both.
Absolutely. So what's your golden take, Mike?
My golden take, Brian, is that Master and Commander is kind of a great movie that for some reason feels like kind of a boring movie. So one of my favorite things to happen on the internet, maybe ever, centers on this film. So a guy on Twitter named Ian McNabb, he tweeted the following: "Lots of folk complaining about lack of sleep during the pandemic. May I recommend Master and Commander, starring the usually captivating, attention-grabbing Russell Crowe. I've never made it past the 10-minute mark. You're welcome, and thanks, Russell." Russell Crowe responded. He tweeted back, "That's the problem with kids these days. No focus. Peter Weir's film is brilliant, an exacting, detail-oriented epic tale of fidelity to empire and service, regardless of the cost. Incredible cinematography by Russell Boyd. I totally agree with him. And a majestic soundtrack. Definitely an adult's movie." And I love this, not only because Russell Crowe goes on Twitter to torch this guy to defend his own movie. Not only does he use the word kids these days, but then all of these news outlets covered it, like Variety, IndieWire, The Independent. It was everywhere. Russell Crowe torching this guy on Twitter. And I think that this is good because it's not just funny, but I understand where that guy is coming from because I've seen this movie before. And honestly, I wasn't looking forward to rewatching it for the show. I felt like it was this like homework, like an obligation. So I go back and I look in my Letterboxd. I rated it 4 stars the first time I saw it. So I don't know why I wasn't looking forward to watching it again, because then when I rewatched it this time, I was totally locked in and really into it. So I guess in conclusion, I sort of feel like the way that a movie makes us feel after the fact in our memories should matter on some level when we're assessing them after. Because when I think about some of my favorites from some of our past series, like Mulholland Drive, Punch Drunk Love, Blair Witch, I still get a charge when I think of them. And I guess that's because of the emotion that I have tied to those movies. And maybe that means that I admire Master and Commander a lot, but I don't have that emotional connection. And maybe that makes the experience a little less rich. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I saw through you on this because I saw that you posted about that that torching on Facebook, And if you recall, I sort of torched you on Facebook saying, I bet Mike is not
How
going to
dare you.
like this only because it is a period epic and you don't like period epics. But I saw through you. I think that you were throwing that one up there just to throw me off and say that you're pretending to not like this movie because you really do like it. But I think that it is interesting, the pacing. I remember afterward, I watched this movie twice actually in the past couple weeks because I was talking it up so much. I'm actually out of town with my family, and I was telling my dad how much I like this movie because I love this movie, and he had never seen it. So we like watched it like a couple days ago in the morning, and afterward I was kind of thinking I didn't know if he really loved it because I think it is easy to not like this movie because the pacing of it is so strange. I mean, it's like a war movie with a lot of like classical music sitting in their chambers, a lot of jokes around the table and walking across the Galapagos. Like it feels kind of episodic in some ways, but for me, somehow they pull it all together and make it work. And it is interesting because it seems to have some things going against it structurally in that way, but
and what you're saying about it kind of being a weird war movie, let's talk about for a second the scene where, you know, Russell Crowe knows that they're being followed by this phantom ship, they keep calling it. And so in order to sort of misdirect this ship, they build this raft out of some, you know, some wood that they had on the ship. And then they put lanterns on it and they kind of push it in the opposite direction, set it sail so that the enemy ship will see the lights and follow that instead of following the real ship. I thought that was great. It's this really cool detail. This is kind of how warfare works before, you know, radar and things like that, which I never would have thought of, but that's not action. And I think that that's part of what you're getting at, I think, here, right? Because we're talking about war where there's really only 1.5 battles, right? Beginning and end.
Yep, it's true. And most of the rest of it is like we're sitting here with no wind. Oh man, this is so boring. But that's what it was like on the ship.
And I don't think that it's boring. When I was watching it, I was engaged the whole time. It's more when I think back on the movie, in my memory, I feel like it's a slow burn, but it's a weird phenomenon because I enjoyed it the first time I watched it clearly, if I gave it 4 stars, and I enjoyed it this time. But when I think about it, it feels boring.
My golden take.
Go for it.
In our 1999 episode, you talked about American Beauty being a pre 9/11 movie, which I thought was very interesting. And I thought it was definitely a golden take. Well, I'm going to sort of piggyback on that because to me, this is maybe the first great post 9/11 movie. This is about leadership going into battle, big themes, patriotism, duty, and it was made after 9/11. You know, we're talking the 2001, 2000 series. Those are not made after 9/11. You know, this is 2003, so they've had time to kind of do it after 9/11. Whether I don't know if, you know, if it was really like conceived after 9/11 necessarily, but the point is, I think that it made me think about what was going on in the world at the time. You know, the Iraq War, you know, George W. Bush going into war and having this huge, you know, great approval rating after 9/11. And this movie starts with Hallam, one of the older, you know, midshipmen. I don't know exactly what they're called, one of the leaders in training, and he's indecisive. And this is kind of setting up the whole themes of the story. Like Russell Crowe, like is his magnetism and his leadership working almost against him in some ways, making him prideful. But you have to go to battle sometimes without everything being perfectly clear. And so it's kind of whether you approve or disapprove of whatever happened with like George W. Bush, I think that it's interesting to watch the movie in that context. So post 9/11 movie, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's really right. And on top of all of that, I think it shows the power of displaying confidence. Even if you don't have it, if you display it to your team, it goes a long way. I mean, we talked about this a little bit on the Bridge of the River Kwai episode, where, that's Alec Guinness's character, right? Like he has to set an example for his people. And Russell Crowe does the same thing here. And it kind of shows that with a certain level of charisma and confidence, you seem like you know what you're doing, and then people trust you because of it. But if you show that little bit of doubt, if you show that you're indecisive, then it makes you look weak, and then your people don't like you. And I think that we watch movies in a very similar way with these actors. Movie star charisma could make a manic pixie dream girl seem okay because you're charmed by her.
Yeah. So questions.
All right. Questions.
Column.
Brian, you want to go first?
Sure. Column. Again, the midshipman who's in training, he's identified as the Jonah on the ship. And he ultimately jumps off. It's pretty sad. It's kind of shocking, picks this rock up and he sinks. And I think it's a very Hitchcockian shot where you see him like
great shot
disappear down. It's a vertical shot down into the water. It's a great shot. So then the wind picks up. So does the movie suggest, is my question to you, that the superstition is true?
What's the superstition?
That you throw the Jonah off board and your luck resumes.
Oh, because he felt like he was cursed.
Yeah, he was cursed. And there's always this tension in the movie of, well, do you really believe that?
Yes.
And Russell Crowe says,
I thought the same
not everything
thing
is in your books.
During it, that the movie does sort of set that. Oh, I think that we had an internet issue there. But I thought the same thing during that part in the movie, that, once he's gone, things do improve. And I personally don't think that Peter Weir is saying that the curse is true, but I think that it's saying that there's a power in coincidence. And this is how these sort of superstitions and legends form, because it's very easy to say that, that correlation equals causation. And then you form a belief system around it.
Mm-hmm. So what's your question for me?
I thought maybe you were going to have a follow-up there, but nope. Okay, so this is the second Russell Crowe, Paul Bettany pairing that we've covered after A Beautiful Mind. My question to you is, which is better?
Master and Commander is far superior in both breadth and strength. No, just kidding. But yeah, I think this is much
agree.
Yeah, much better than Beautiful Mind. Although the magnetism and that relationship is still great in A Beautiful Mind. I think that Paul Bettany is great in both movies, but this movie overall is definitely better.
I don't agree that the magic and their relationship dynamic in A Beautiful Mind is great. I said it in that episode. And I think that specifically what I like so much about their pairing here is I think that Bettany as a character and their relationship is 100 times better than in A Beautiful Mind. Because in A Beautiful Mind, for most of the movie, Paul Bettany is asked to be super charismatic, super enthusiastic. He's like the perfect friend. He's always there. We find out later why that is, but he's supposed to kind of be this force of like overwhelming good. And to me, that just came off very, very stagey. And here, he plays everything so much lower. He's not trying to be Mr. Charisma. And I think he's more charismatic because of that. I believed everything he said. I loved him as a character. I thought he's a great foil to Russell Crowe. And he's going to be on my short list for possible best supporting actor when we get to the end of 2003. That's how much I liked his performance here. So after A Beautiful Mind, I was really surprised that he was kind of my favorite thing about this movie.
Yeah. Paul Bettany. I'm a sucker for what he's actually doing and talking about in the movie. Like all the naturalism is really attractive to me. And I buy that character. So what might have been? Tell me yes or no. Russell Crowe was he was planning to be in Cinderella Man. And he decided to pause Cinderella Man so he could make this movie. So in the shuffle, the director for Cinderella Man changed because he eventually made it in 2005. But the original, it was eventually made by Ron Howard. So what that meant was that another director had to get booted off of the Cinderella Man project. And I'm wondering if you would prefer that it was actually directed by Lasse Hallström.
Wow. You know what? I have not seen Cinderella Man
You haven't? Okay.
because
It's been a long
it's
time.
it's another
For
one of
me.
those movies that it feels like a Oscar movie of a certain time.
Yeah.
And that is why I've sort of avoided it. So I can't speak to Ron Howard's version, but the version in my head that I imagine Cinderella Man to be is directed by Lasse Hallström. So wow, that's
Yes,
great. I love that.
that is hilarious.
So,
Okay,
but
Heath.
I'm gonna say no because I've had enough experience with Hallström to know that I'm never thrilled about his movies. So let's see what Ron Howard can do.
Heath Ledger instead of Paul Bettany. Although Paul Bettany's great, what about Heath Ledger in that role? Could you imagine that?
I don't think I'm ever gonna say no to Heath Ledger in any role, but I just said that Paul Bettany was my favorite part of this movie. So maybe they can battle it out Cinderella Man style to see who can get the role.
Touche. Okay, so at one point they were thinking of putting in a love interest for Russell Crowe in this movie, and they were going to put in Keira Knightley as the love
Ugh,
interest.
no.
Love Keira Knightley. You don't
Hard,
like? Do you not like Keira
hard
Knightley, or you
no.
just don't want the love story?
Uh, Big both on
What?
that. I don't. This movie does not need a love story. The love it already has one. Russell Crowe, when they're meeting these natives, I think on near the Galapagos, he sees a woman. He makes eye contact with her. They have a moment, and we know in that moment that he's considering, should I bring her on the ship? Should I spend some time with her? But he chooses duty instead. That is enough. That's all we need to know about his character, that he is interested, but he's choosing a different priority. And also Keira Knightley, I don't know. She's fine, but she's the same in everything.
I love Keira Knightley. I can't wait till we get to Atonement, which is definitely one of the best movies of the decade, which I'm sure you'll agree with me when we get there.
I would just like to see Keira Knightley play something that's not in a costume or so upper class. Even what I think she's in a movie called A Begin Again, that's sort of a musical that's in a modern day, but still, she just seems so distant and kind of, I don't know. There's a very dainty quality that she always puts out. I'd like to see her get her hands dirty.
It's a brilliant daintiness, Mike.
I guess.
Trivia. There were some scenes obviously shot on the water, you can tell, in this movie. And when they were done in the same 20 million gallon tank in Mexico that was built for the filming of Titanic.
Makes sense.
Same sense, yeah. This is just a tidbit about Paul Bettany's life story. First of all, when he was 16, he dropped out of school.
We love that.
Yeah, we love it when actors drop out of high school. But it was because his brother died at age 8, and that was, that shook him obviously, and he left home and he became a street performer in London. Paul Bettany.
Okay.
He lived by playing his guitar, like on the street.
Nice.
2003, Paul Bettany married Jennifer Connelly. They met and fell in love on The Beautiful Mind set. And he was like, goes back to my September 11th theme of this episode, because he was like this debating whether he should ask her out and everything. And he said that it was partly because of September 11th that motivated him to bite the bullet and just go, ask her out.
We've
courage.
seen Jennifer Connelly in a few movies now. I think he had other reasons to ask her out other than 9/11.
It could be. He says that she was his childhood crush since he first saw her in Labyrinth in 1986.
Nice.
Russell Crowe learned violin for this movie, which we love. Don't we love it when they learn instruments?
We do. I wrote down the same thing. He had training for 3 months, and it looks like he's been playing forever.
Yeah, it does. He also, it wasn't in the budget to buy the actual old violin, but the actual violin was made in 1890, and he bought it with his own money because he wanted to have an authentic violin.
Wow.
So that's pretty cool. He eventually sold it at an auction for $104,000.
That was his divorce auction, right?
I don't know.
Yeah. After he was divorced, he sold a ton of movie memorabilia. Okay. The shorts from Cinderella Man, some equipment from Gladiator, this kind of stuff to recoup some of his losses. Pretty sad, but that interesting.
Last thing is about the sound effects. So Richard King was the sound designer. He won an Oscar, and partly because they went to all these great lengths to record the sounds. So to make the sound for the storm, he devised a wooden frame rigged with 1,000 feet of line and put it in the back of a pickup truck. Drove down the highway at 70 miles an hour and used like this barbecue and refrigerator grill to get the shrieking and the sighing sounds from the ships.
Wow.
I love that kind of detail.
Yeah, that's
because
cool.
the sounds that you make, it's not always you believe it that it comes from a ship, but they really amp it up. And they did the same thing with a lot of the battle sounds, like adding to them, using rifle shots in addition to the cannonballs and things like that. So he won an Oscar. Sounds like it was well deserved.
Let's get right into keep it or kick it. This is the big reveal, Brian. What are you going to do?
I will wholeheartedly keep the movie for in part because of the naturalism, because it does just elevate the movie. And Christopher Hitchens, a critic, said this, that we get he gave it a mixed review actually, but he said that when the HMS Surprise makes landfall in the Galapagos, we get a beautifully filmed sequence about how the dawn of scientific enlightenment might have felt. And I think that is what makes this different from just a typical war movie. I don't know, dare I say it makes it one of the best war movies in the past few decades?
Yeah, it even seems a little bit odd to call it a war movie because it is one, but there is so much other time spent on the foil to war, sort of focusing on nature, on science, on philosophy as a whole, that maybe it's more than a war movie.
Mm-hmm. And you?
I'm going to say, Brian, I am keeping this as well. I'm going to keep it.
Even though it's a period epic?
Yes, this is the first movie we're doing of 2003. And so I do feel like I need to preface it by saying, I don't know if it will remain in my top 5 because, we're going to be watching a lot of other good movies this year, but the cinematography, the attention to detail, the awesome special effects, and just getting that look at what naval life was like in a serious way, other than like pirate movies. I thought that was all really good and interesting, and that it deserves to be on the short list for those sort of top 5 considerations. So it is for me. There it is. It's on the list.
Very good. Both keeping
2 keeps.
2003 also was another Captain Jack with Keira Knightley.
Oh, yeah. Which one was that? 2?
Pirates of the Caribbean. It was number 1.
Oh, okay. I like number 1.
Clearly the best one.
The other ones are almost unwatchable.
They are, but I'm gonna have to rewatch number 1 again to see if it'll where it fits in the conversation. In our next episode of the 2003 series, we will talk about Lost in Translation, Sofia Coppola's story of love and alienation in Japan, starring Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson.
Yeah, looking forward to that. We want to hear from you. Send in your favorite Russell Crowe movie or performance. It seems like this is becoming a recurring theme after Gladiator and The Insider. But send them in and we will read your answers on the show. You can find us at bestpicturethis.com, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or by telling your smart speaker to play Best Picture This. We're also on Facebook and Twitter at Best Picture This. And for 15 years of Golden Takes, head over to Letterboxd where you'll find me, Mike Cavalieri.
We have done a lot of Russell Crowe because you also forgot A Beautiful Mind.
Oh, yeah. Conveniently forgot that one.
Do you have a favorite movie from the past that has been forgotten? Well, become a patron and you can choose one. Go to patreon.com/bestpicturethis and you can choose a movie for one of our bonus episodes. We've done The Fly, Garden State, Bridge on the River Kwai. We'll be doing Drowning Mona and Pleasantville coming up. So thanks to Chris, Matt, Joey, Spencer, and Maddie for choosing those movies and becoming patrons.
Yes. And please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts. That really helps us reach new listeners.
Until next time, we'll be taking a break from watching movies so that we can draw pictures of beetles in our sketchbooks.
Kick it!